So Star Wars month is coming up, so I wanted to do a little lore video about Star Wars that I really think goes underappreciated. Is just all the world building and source lore and politics that went into creating the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars in general in Legends, and how it's kind of terrifying how a dark, shadowy cult, demonic cult, for all intents and purposes, took control of all the major corporations, all the major factions in the galaxy, created numerous terror wars, proxy wars, and did everything in their power to fuck over the Jedi and slowly destroy galactic society, create division, create conflict, give power to megacorporations, spread Sith occultism to the higher echelons of galactic government, and create a galactic war between two totalitarian regimes, killing billions and making a shit ton of money and acquiring power. Sounds very, very relatable. And that's just all. You can find all of this in the Darth Plagueis novel, which is an excellent origin story for the Sith and what they're doing for the last 200 years before the prequels. It's really dark. The Sith alchemy, the Sith experiments, the Sith cult influencing the highest echelons of galactic policymakers, politicians, crime lords, corporations. All this was planned for decades. And they went back and forth and had contingency plans with the contingency plans. The Clone Wars and both the Grand Army of the Republic and the Confederacy were two puppet armies and regimes created by Palpatine for nothing but to create war and stagnation and suffering across the galaxy that he would use to create an absolute total control over the universe and declare his galactic empire. It's pretty terrifying, and Plagueis is one of the ultimate books of Star Wars politics ever written. I do believe that. I mean, hey, here's the thing. The Star Wars prequel trilogy was written right after the 90s, the corporate lobbying in Congress, 9/11, emergency powers, Patriot Act. All these sum up the prequels to a T. How all these wars and conflicts, rebellions, revolutions, corporate crime wars, all this is real stuff, and Star Wars Legends did a great job of bringing these politics to life and to see how they destroy civilization, how a republic, a great republic, a democratic liberal republic, can be taken over through not even a conquering army of the halls of parliament, but signing away your freedom bit by bit. And the Sith were master manipulators. They were in the Republic government for for almost a millennia, infiltrating, creating wars, creating corruption, and slowly transforming society, every aspect of society, into the perfect chaos melting pot that they needed with all the anarchy, war, death, enslavement, race wars, species wars, crime lords that they needed, creating xenophobia, creating human high culture. Everything in Palpatine's plan was to a T, to a fucking T, to creating the culture he needed to create the Galactic Empire and all its racism, all its hatred of spirituality and religion, all its hatred towards the Jedi, all its hatred towards aliens, and droids even. Because the Clone Wars was also designed ideologically to create the atmosphere he needed to create the Galactic Empire. He took advantage of good politicians, good people, and twisted them to his side. Everything was meticulously planned to create the atmosphere he wanted to create. And then there's the conflict itself. The Clone Wars itself was two massive military industrial complexes created over the span of decades to create entire two massive war machines to destroy entire planets, create untold amount of death and suffering. And here's the thing, I think Palpatine, if he wanted to, he probably had counter plans, like if the clone army failed, he would just take control of the Confederacy and surrender the Republic, but find a way where he would take power of both Confederacy and the Republic. Anything was planned with Palpatine. I mean, there was more than just Order 66. The powers and meticulousness that went into creating the clone troopers in Order 66, the plans that went into, he created all these emergency plans and plans within plans to ensure his own power. The Sith were flexible. They create entire conflicts. The whole pin of the conflict was to kill as many Jedi as possible, make the Jedi look bad. Creating species wars and civil wars on planets to divide the peoples and the cultures and create an anti-alien sentiment. The guy was all about manipulating everything for his own advantage. He had Sith agents and dark side acolytes in the Separatists and in the frickin' Republic carrying out his will. This is terrifying, but it's also a wake-up call. Living in the world we live in right now, Star Wars has been right since the early 2000s, if not the late 90s. And that's why the prequel trilogy is so, especially its lore. The lore that went into the Legends books and continuity from Darth Plagueis to the Republic Commando books to the comics, showing a galactic republic that's been torn in two, and how there's good people on both sides, how you see Master Yoda killing a centuries-old friend of his, you see Jedi turning on Jedi, you see friendships destroying itself, and there's good intentioned people in both factions. A war that no one wants, but is entirely created just to give one man power. That's the insidiousness of Sidious. Double whammy there. Fuck. Interesting. I think the Clone Wars TV show, both the cartoons, because I'm that old, yeah, deal with it. Both the Clone Wars TV shows and the books and the comics show all the character stories of people in this conflict, whether it be Jedi, clone troopers, separatists, aliens, dark Jedi, Sith, how everyone is being manipulated and losing everything in this war, seeing the ideals they believe in destroyed day by day by their own governments and their own armies, watching all these lives who the clone troopers are slaves to the Jedi, and there's all the conflict in the Jedi Order about that. There is clone troopers trying to do what's right, and these are mostly clone commandos just going rogue and reclaiming their Mandalorian heritage. You have Ahsoka's court trial. You have Anakin and Padme and their relationship and the struggles they're going through. You have numerous Jedi losing their Padawans to the dark side. There's all these personal stories and stories of factions and intrigue and politics that give this timeline such depth and make you realize how tragic this fucking war is. In the Galactic Civil War, there is a clearly defined good and bad guy. The rebellion had principles, and they're fighting for the right ideals to restore the Republic, to restore democracy. In the Clone Wars, you have two totalitarian regimes. What's the choice? Communist Soviet Union or Nazi Germany fighting for control of the galaxy with two massive war military industrial complexes. They're built off of fear, slavery, and just utter destruction. There's politicians who are good people on both sides, and there's all these stories throughout the conflict that give it depth and make you show this is no one's war. This war will only end in the destruction of freedom and peace. And that's something the expanded universe for the Clone Wars saga really drilled home, especially the Jedi who fell to the dark side, Jedi who are realizing the truth about this entire conflict, and they're struggling to figure out how to best serve the Force, not necessarily the politicians that the Jedi High Council had become. Even the Jedi were used as tools by Sidious. To a T. To a fucking T. There's a lot of Jedi corruption during the last decades of the Republic. You had Jedi destroying the Mandalorians to a soldier, siding with corrupt politicians. There's shown Grievous' backstory. Which, by the way, if you're looking for good backstories, the Clone Wars pre-Disney had plenty of them. Grievous actually fell for. The Republic fucked over his people hard, but then again, it wasn't really the Jedi themselves, is what Sidious was doing through his influence and proxies within the Order. The Jedi Order had lost their soul and had become overglorified politicians, And then there's Jedi like Qui-Gon who are loyal to the Force, who are doing everything they're possible to make the prophecy fulfilled, even if that means the destruction of the Jedi Order as it is. Another tragic backstory in the Clone Wars is Ventress. The Jedi fucked her over, she became a Sith, became a Dark Jedi Sith assassin, was used like you wouldn't believe by Dooku and Sidious, lost everything. And I think her story in Clone Wars is awesome, especially the stories we get after the Clone Wars with like Tales of the Underworld, Tales of the Empire, which have been really good anthology stories. Anything touched by Dave Filoni is good, okay? Anything touched by Dave Filoni is good. That's why I have hope for Star Wars going forward. Ventress was a tragic character. She was an orphan, and the Jedi fucked her over, and the Sith fucked her over, and she became a bounty hunter and just became loyal to the Force. Same thing with Qui-Gon. He was fucked over by the Jedi and killed by the Sith, and he was loyal to the Force and wanted to see the will of the Force done instead of the will of the Jedi Council. Everything in the Clone Wars is a tragedy. A Greek tragedy to the highest caliber. The fall of ideals, the fall of institutions and religions that had been corrupted and twisted and lost their ways, the Republic, the Jedi, the rise of corporate greed and militarization of and of society, the Confederacy, which is fascist beyond fucking belief, the Republic Army, and the creating of nepotism and creating entire entire two generations of political powerful families and individuals who were loyal to Palpatine, were in the Republic, and would become his high command as soon as the Clone Wars ended. And they were shaping his ideology of human, male centric policies that would drag out the galaxy backwards by centuries in positions of power. He created his own power base and found the individuals that would lead his new regime as soon as the Clone Wars were over with. It's insidious. And a lot of these good Republic officers and politicians would found the New Republic. So there's a lot of good backstory writing with that. The noble, good politicians and Republic officers would form the rebellion and become the leaders of the New Republic. And I like that kind of generational storytelling. I really do. And then at the end of the day, the people who were the real rebels of the Clone Wars weren't the Separatists, it wasn't the Republic. It was close groups of friends and families, Jedi and their loyal Republic commandos that stayed loyal to them. It was the clone trooper family that re-embraced Mandalorian heritage. It was these networks of friends and family who are Jedi, Republic military, rebels, dissidents, who fled from the wars and they created their own major rebel alliances based on friends and family who fought against the New Order after the Clone Wars and kept on fighting the good fight. It was it was rogue Jedi families. It was rogue Republic commandos that got the ball rolling for the Rebel Alliance. And that's a story that really sticks with me. It was clone commandos making alliances with Jedi, Maul working with former Jedi Padawans. I mean, there's also the Maul story where Maul just formed his own his own shadow empire, his own criminal underworld that fought against Sidious and his dominion. So you had that going on. But the early Rebel Alliance, they were friends and family. It was soldiers and idealists and Republic dissidents, often alliances of families, because that's something Star Wars is really good at, the defiance of friends and family that formed the Rebel Alliance that eventually overthrew the Empire. And maybe that's what we need to focus on ourselves, close-knit group of like weirdos and geeks and freaks that says no to the culture war, to the war of ideologies, and fights the good fight in whatever way we can. That's the ultimate middle finger to fascism. And that's something Lucas has laid out since the day one of his storytelling and how he writes his stories and who the good guys are. Here's the other thing. Don't trust your politicians, because if Clone Wars has proven anything, the two most armies and political parties and factions are all controlled by a single vision, a cult of self-righteous assholes, of dark, demonic assholes who want to use the culture war, who want to use the chaos around the world to fill their pockets, and they worship the almighty dark side, Baal in our real world. And these people manipulate politics, they manipulate good people into like achieving their ends. Both parties do it, and that's why it's more important to put your faith in the Force slash God and the people you have in your life than it's to trust politicians. Letter of the day. But getting back to the Star Wars aspect of this, the Phantom Menace is probably my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. And the prequels in general, I think, are works of art. The sequel trilogy pales in comparison towards. The writing, storytelling, and detail that went into creating the entire Clone Wars era of the Republic is such good writing that Disney has yet to even come close to matching that kind of world building, character arcs, and stories that revolve around the sequel trilogy in the Republic era in canon are terribly written compared to the craft that went into the prequel era of the 2000 Star Wars. And all the good stories in the prequel era, all the good Star stories being written right now are written by Dave Filoni, the guy who was the most involved in that era of Star Wars, the prequels, and he respected Legends. So I'm optimistic to see what he can do now he's had George Lucasfilm. Maybe we can get back that genius that went into the world building of the last days of the Republic. Maybe Dave Filoni can unlock that again. I'm hopeful. And all the good stuff right now, the stuff that deals with the early days of the Empire, Darth Maul, Shadow Lord, Bad Batch, the last season of Clone Wars, perfect series that captured the ethos and mythos that went into the Star Wars prequel era. Brilliant stories. And I'd like to see that be the focus going forward. Till next time, folks, may the Force be with you. God bless. Fuck Disney. Fuck Kathleen Kennedy. And fuck the oligarchs that are trying to take away our freedoms. Peace out, folks. And fuck Disney again. Giddy, giddy, giddy.